Thank you, David. Well, I imagine you're all awake now, and a very graphic depiction of what disaster means. Thank you for that. Hate to leave it on that note, though, so let's take some questions for the panel. Lily?
So if it's such an obvious thing that we should be working together for this shared objectives and shared responsibility, why do we fail to effectively do so? Why is there no even regional legal authority anywhere to act regionally, basically, in case of disaster management?
Well, the reason is that the form of regional government that we have is one, it's weak, and it's comprised of services that are voluntarily delegated upward by local municipalities. And there has been recently a service established to provide some intermunicipal coordination for emergency planning, which is good on the on the preparation and the planning side of it. But I guess what you don't have because of our form of government is the financial and other resources being put together at a regional level so that they could be deployed in any part of the region in the event of an emergency. That requires cooperation on the part of the municipalities, acceptance of the risk on the part of the municipalities, and allocation of funds.
David, I was flattened by your presentation, but I'm curious, is resilience the new sustainability?
What's in the label?
What is in the label?
What's in the label?
Action, unity, motivation, money?
I suppose all of us throughout the day have been talking about evidence-based research and the ability to understand and know our region, and as Bill Rees said, the intelligence to plan. So I don't care about labels, that's the progress I'm interested in.
Maybe, can I add to that? To me, the concepts are both important, but they're quite different. I think that sustainability is meeting this generation's needs without compromising the ability of future generations or other generations in the world, contemporaries, to meet their needs. Resilience is being ready to respond and preparing to respond to threats and events that will happen in the future over which you have no control. So I think there are two parts of an essential attitude, if you like, towards the future.
Tamsin, what does it feel like to be young and a recent graduate? Well, so I've been studying this for the past 2 years, and Tamsin work, she's done a lot. And it's not just in Vancouver, but also kind of, there are regional ripples. And I'm just wondering, given that there are young master students, although most of them left, what is it like? Like given all the barriers potentially that could be in your way, what is the change-making process feel like?
Amazing. I think for me, it's really been about small steps. So trying to create action and to create networks that want to move everything forward slowly but surely. And I think I'm lucky in that this is gaining a lot of momentum internationally, climate adaptation and resilience, and perhaps for wrong reasons as well, in that we're starting to abandon mitigation towards adaptation. But certainly, I think not seeing the barriers as anything more than a challenge to work through. Thanks for the great question.
Thank you for another wonderful panel presentation at this great day of panel presentations. I guess I have a question that sort of maybe for me as I try and synthesize what has been said earlier today I kind of see like, you know, one of the general themes coming out of the panels as being this idea of like a moral crisis and how we're unable to move towards sustainability goals for whatever reason. And so I would like to hear your, the opinion of the panelists on whether or not disaster planning should, whether there's any scope for the compensation of people who are affected by these very long-term plans, their interest in property, their interest in their material livelihoods. Like, to what extent should the government be prepared to pay them out? I'm sorry.
To pay out homeowners in
Yeah,
disaster.
I suppose you could specify, yes, say some homeowner X, yeah. But it's not just about home ownership. It's about, you know, the material livelihood that you have now in this region and the one that you will have after a major disaster, one which will hopefully be more sustainable. But, you know, so like, in planning for that future, like, where's compensation due?
Right, I mean, we very much rely on the insurance world in terms of compensation, or as well on the provincial government for post-disaster assistance. So certainly we haven't gone there yet in the municipal sphere of would we compensate in a disaster situation. I think there's a big gap there, and there's certainly implications to policies. So if you put a floodplain on a map where there wasn't one before, will you still get disaster assistance from the province? You know, and the insurance industry is certainly looking at residential flood insurance, and we've recently been getting calls from reinsurers. The city's reinsurers were one of the biggest property owners asking, what are you doing about coastal flooding? So certainly I think that's coming along. It's all starting to be explored.
I was going to say, in Christchurch, this new monster earthquake reconstruction agency I was talking about for the Canterbury Plain, 6 months after the February event, redlined an awful lot of the eastern part of the city, where their engineers advised them that they would not be able to rebuild the infrastructure, all the utility, the lifelines, and so on, at a reasonable cost. So the government said, okay, New Zealand's a distinctive jurisdiction because it has compulsory earthquake insurance. Now that sounds good, but the devil is in the detail. And some of those claims have not been settled 3 years later. So people were asked to move in about 18 months. 5,000 buildings have been demolished. I'm not quite sure what's going to happen to that region. So there's an awful lot of displaced people who were really angry against the city council for not informing them that they were in a risk-prone area to begin with, really angry against the national government and the reconstruction agency for destroying their house, and doubly pissed off with the insurance company for not paying them. It's a real problem down there.
I want to ask the panel if there has been any scenario building on how a major disaster like an earthquake or a major flooding would affect property values in an overly inflated housing market. Because it seems to me that the talk around disaster and vulnerability in the region has not really reduced the appetite for housing in the region. And it might be linked to perceptions, as David was saying earlier, that because we're probably going to see more trends around climate migration, that people who are moving to Vancouver are perceiving that perceptions of vulnerability and risk are higher in other places than it is in the region. And maybe the communication could be framed differently or see the connections between this, and maybe through climate migration issues. So,
well, I did go to a conference recently looking at the Calgary floods and asked them that in those areas that were flooded, were property values affected, and they haven't been affected at all. So, no, in the rebuilt areas or in areas that were reconstructed. So, Certainly that's something on our minds, and wonder how that will work, and with the lack of residential insurance and no price indicator that way, if we start putting out maps. I talked to the Insurance Bureau of Canada. Are your adjusters going to start adjusting differently? No, we do it on an annual basis. Sea level rise is way in the future. We're doing it. It's not going to change year to year. We have no concern that way. So I think there's a big issue in terms of communicating that risk and making it real.
I guess I think that compared to any of the, or virtually any of the places in the world where people might be migrating from, the total risk exposure, economic, physical, etc., compared to here is much more significant. So I don't think that people would be reluctant to move from many of those places to Greater Vancouver because of a perception of a risk here that's greater than what they're facing in their home environment.
So thank you, panels.